In just a few hours, one of the former officers convicted of obstruction in the death of Tyre Nichols is due in court. Today, Justin Smith is set to appear for a status hearing. The other former officers, Demetrius Haley, Tadarius Bean, and Emmett Martin III, Desmond Mills Jr. as well, are all set to appear in court Thursday. Now, each of these men were set to be sentenced earlier this month, but federal judge Mark Norris recused himself just days before the hearings, and we're still not sure why. Chief Judge Cheryl Lippman will now oversee this case, but this change has caused several delays for all parties involved. In this case, 3 defendants were tried together, but they received different verdicts, and they will all be sentenced separately. Happening today, one of the former officers convicted of obstruction in the death of Tyre Nichols is due in court. Today, Justin Smith is set to appear for a status hearing, and the other former officers, Demetrius Haley, Tadarius Bean, Emmett Martin III, and Desmond Mills Jr. are all set to appear in court on Thursday. Now, each one of these men were set to be sentenced earlier this month, but federal judge Mark Norris recused himself just days before this hearing, and we're still not sure why. Chief Judge Cheryl Lippman will now oversee this case, but this change has caused significant and several delays for all parties involved. So this case is far from over, and in some ways it's growing more and more complex by the day. So joining us now is attorney Arthur Horn to help us really understand the legal process of what we're seeing. Attorney Horn, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So our first question is this. All 3 defendants were really tried together. They received different verdicts, and they will now be sentenced separately. Is that normal, or is that unusual for even a case like this?
It's normal. They were co-defendants in the original trial. Now you enter into the sentencing phase. In the sentencing phase, each individual will be given a pre-sentence report that'll be prepared by the pretrial services. That report will be given to the judge. That report will be given to the attorneys in the case, and they'll make a recommendation under the federal sentencing guidelines as to what the sentence should be.
So it is possible that each co-defendant could have a different sentence?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the other thing is, once that report is prepared, the guidelines are not mandatory. So that doesn't mean necessarily that the judge has to follow the guidelines. It sort of gives them a guide to the sentence.
Yeah. So a judge in this case, what do they look toward or for to recommend the sentence or to set the sentence for a defendant?
They're going to look at the person's history. They're going to look at their criminal record, which in this case, none of these individuals had a criminal history. They're going to look at their upbringing, how they grew up, what type of homes they grew up in, were there extenuating circumstances that caused them to commit the crime, what they've done in the community outside of their police work. So I think they're going to look at a number of factors to determine the proper sentence for these officers.
Could their prior work on the force as police officers help or hurt in their sentencing?
I think it helps them. I think it helps them, especially if they've received any commendations, if they've received any awards, because again, this is a kind of a one-time situation, and most likely none of these officers will be repeat offenders. And so I think because of the publicity that this case has received, it's tough. It's going to be tough for the judge to come up with the appropriate sentence, because you've got a lot of pressure from the public to throw the book at these individuals, but at the same time, under the sentencing guidelines, their guideline range probably is not going to be that great.
After a person has been sentenced, could they be immediately taken into custody, or could there be a waiting period where they come back and will begin their sentence at a later date?
So in the federal system, what happens is, at the time of sentencing, depending on the length of sentence and the type of sentence, usually the defense attorney will ask that the client be allowed to report. That way it gives your client some time to get their affairs in order, to say goodbyes to their family, and just to get mentally prepared to go to prison. Now, in this case, we don't know what the sentence looks like at this point. So, I mean, the recommendation could be for straight probation. But the judge could allow the officers time to turn themselves in. They would get a letter from the Board of Prisons, and they would be told where to turn themselves in and to what prison.
How does it differ from a state sentence? Do you have to serve all of the time that you've been given, or how does that work?
So there's no parole in the federal system. Unlike the state system, you have a parole system. So when somebody is sentenced, that's your time. Incarceration is considered differently in the federal system. Like for example, you could be sentenced to serve 15 months. You could do 5 months in an actual prison. You could do 5 months in an actual halfway house. You could do 5 months in home confinement. Under the federal prison system, those are all considered prison or confinement. In this case, I know at least maybe a couple of the officers would qualify to go to a camp versus a minimum or medium security facility.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what a camp looks like, what it is, and how that's different?
Yeah, we actually have one in Millington. They don't have any locks on the doors. The prisoners aren't required to wear uniforms, and it's a minimum security facility. So you're not free to leave off the campus, but it's not like you're locked down 23 hours a day and you only get one day to do activities like you would in some of the state system.
Thank you so much for this information. It's been really, really helpful. Big decisions ahead, and we'll just have to sit and wait and see how it all unfolds.
It'll be interesting.
Yes, it will.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.